Hey there, welcome to Here's What I Learned. I'm Jackie Hayes, a systems strategist, unapologetic, smutty romantasy lover, Dungeons & Dragons geek, and your no BS guide to building a business that works for you. This is the place where we swap stories, share lessons, and get real about the highs and lows of creating a life and business that actually feels good. No cookie cutter advice here, just honest conversations about what's working, what's not, and how to rewrite the rules to fit your version of success. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of Here's What I Learned. Today I have Taina Brown, and she is a former feminist scholar turned strategy whiz, and y'all know how I love strategy. And she is trained in somatic CBT methods. And as a personal and professional development coach over the last 15 years, she has helped leaders and their teams show up as their best value-aligned selves so they can do good work. Welcome to the podcast today. I would love to know, what is something that you have been learning about lately?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jackie. I am excited to have this conversation because I feel like I am in a really big learning season right now. And part of that is because of how the past year has looked for me. And so a little over a year ago, I ended up being hospitalized for over a month. And it was a very traumatic experience. If anyone is listening and has been hospitalized for a long time, or has had a friend or a family member who has been hospitalized for a long time, how traumatic it can be. And so at the time, I had a roster of clients that I was meeting with, and everything had to stop. Like, I had to put everything on pause. And I was really afraid to do that, but I had no choice in doing that because I literally just could not work and had no energy to do anything. And it was also just really depressed from being in the hospital for so long. But luckily, I had clients who were incredibly values aligned with my values and were exceptionally gracious and generous with me about my healing and my recovery time. And they reciprocated back to me how to hold space for people, how I had been holding space for them. And so when I was discharged towards the end of March 2024, basically what I was told from my medical team in the hospital, my PCP, was that the timeline for recovery was unknown. And so it could take 6 months, it could take 6 years. And it really just depended on how my body was going to be responding to just the trauma of being in the hospital for so long. And so if you're into astrology and you know anything about earth signs, you know that we like to be in control. We like definite answers. We need to know what the expectations are, where the boundaries are, so we feel like we can get our stuff done. And having that much ambiguity was really, really scary for me. Obviously I had dealt with ambiguity before because life is nothing but ambiguity at times, but never to this scale. And so for the past year and still currently, as I'm in recovery, I've just been in this really deep learning season about what it could look like to run a business that really is sustainable, that really is a space where I can show up as my best self for my clients without putting myself in harm's way and getting too entangled in things like toxic individualism and toxic capitalism. And these are things that I believed before, right? But it's different when you have to implement it in a new way that you're not used to. And so I've been really leaning on the principles of Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. It's a book that she wrote years ago. I think it's one of the first books that she published. She's an activist and an organizer and also a facilitator. And so I usually read that book once a year because I feel like every time I read it, I get something new out of it. And so I've just kind of decided that there's no time like right now for me to really lean into, okay, how do I really, really apply these principles to my business? Because every time I've read it in the past, it's been on the personal level, But now on a professional level, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, how do I apply these emergent strategy principles to my business? And so that's what I'm learning right now. I know that was a mouthful, but that's where I'm at.
Well, there's all kinds of reasons why business owners have to step away. Sometimes it's planned. There's a point at which I plan on stepping away for a month, but it's so I can go on a solo hike. It'll be planned. I'll know in advance for a very long time so I can set things up. But as business owners, we can't always plan for those to happen. And having something like this where you're in the hospital for a month, there's great things about being a solopreneur or having a very small team and being the one who interacts with your clients. And then there's this. So there's
Yeah.
it kind of comes to a grinding halt. And you kind of have to balance which one do you want, but you still need to be making money while you're in the hospital. So
yeah. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that just leads perfectly into what is usually my next question, which I think you've started to elaborate on, which is how to do business your way. And I would love to hear more about how you're applying emergent strategies to your business now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the things that I've kind of been, I don't want to say stuck on, but chewing on for several weeks now is from the chapter on intentional adaptation in emergent strategy. And so if you are unfamiliar with Adrienne Maree Brown's work in the book Emergent Strategy, she uses a lot of biomimicry to help people understand the concept of emergence, right? And how do we apply that to our everyday lives? And in this chapter, she specifically talks about how birds who migrate share the leadership, right, of leading the flock. As they're moving that way, everyone has an opportunity to rest and everyone has an opportunity to lead. She also talks about the murmurations of starlings and how the way that they're able to move seemingly chaotic, but still so in sync, is that these birds, what they do is they are able to tune into their closest neighbors. And every bird does that. And as your neighbor moves and shifts direction, then you move and you shift direction. And that concept has just been something that I've just been chewing on a lot over the past several weeks. And it's led me to ask myself, as an entrepreneur, right now it's just me and my business. I do hope to one day be able to hire people and to support the work, to support clients, people that are values aligned, that I can pay well and equitably, right, as a model for how to do business differently. But as an individual solopreneur right now, like, who are my closest business neighbors and how are they moving? What shifts are they making, right? And so I've been turning this over in my head and thinking about, okay, what is a business neighbor? Does that mean someone like geographically local? Does that mean someone in a network that I'm a part of? And I think it can encompass anything, right? I think it can mean what I want it to mean. And so I've been just kind of thinking through who are the people that I would consider a business neighbor and understanding how their business functions, not at a very granular level, but in terms of values and vision, and then using that as a model to notice patterns for business, right? So like for starlings, it's their 7 closest neighbors, right? For me as a human, it might not be 7 people, it might be 4 people, it might be 10 people, right? But let's say it is 7 people and 4 or 5 out of 7 are making similar shifts in how they're functioning and how they're operating, then that's a signal to me, right, to be curious about, is that a shift I should be making as well, right? And maybe it doesn't look exactly the same. Maybe it's implemented differently, but what is causing my neighbors, right, to want to move in this direction, and how is that going to affect me as a business owner? And so I think that really forces me to come from a place of curiosity as opposed to a place of just like knowing it all, right? So again, challenging a lot of that earth energy that I'm not used to. So that's been like the very, very nuanced lesson that I'm kind of like chewing on right now.
I love the idea of using neighbor in language. It just connotates something very different than collaborator or any
Mm,
other words that we tend to use. It's just so much more community connected feeling. And I love this idea of the starlings is like, it's one shift. It's not just the seven around that are going to shift because they're going to shift, but they have seven, each of them have
yeah,
seven neighbors and
yeah,
it just ripples out. And if
right.
we think about that when we're doing business, I was talking to somebody who has never had an online business or a business of their own. And I said, well, if this industry is struggling, let's just say website design. If website design is struggling right now, then all the people that support website designers are going to start struggling. And then all the people
Mm-hmm.
that support them are going to start struggling. Vice versa, if one is doing great, then, it kind of lifts up everybody else. It's just kind of this domino effect. We are a
Yeah,
giant ecosystem. We're not just VAs and website designers and brand. We are an ecosystem of service providers and coaches and consultants. And when one of us has a shift, it does impact
yeah.
our neighbors.
Yeah, yeah. I think too often we think of the work that we do as being siloed, right? Because of the social structures that we are brought up in, right? We're conditioned to say, well, I'm just responsible for me and my work is my work and it has nothing to do with you. But in reality, just as you pointed out, it really does. It does affect, right? If my business is not doing well because of whatever reason, then like not only does it affect my ability to provide for myself, but then it also affects my ability to, like, if I had like a VA, right, would I have to let them go, right? If I had someone that I was working on for like branding design or whatever, like it's a microcosm, it's an ecosystem. I mean, you use the perfect word for it. It's an ecosystem. And capitalism, right? It's impossible to run a business without being embedded in capitalism. And so the way that capitalism functions is in a very siloed way because it's less about ecosystems and more about competition, right? About who's going to come out on top and at whatever cost. And so I think we can't like completely get away from capitalism, right? As a business owner. And this is something that Becky and I have talked on the podcast about too, about like how do you run an ethical business within the system of capitalism if capitalism is so unethical, right? And so we can't completely get away from it. But I think the more that we can push against it in little ways, like that will have the same ripple effects, right? And so it's not necessarily always about making a big change or a big shift, but like, what are the little ways that I'm like challenging capitalism, right? And that can look like if you do hire a VA, right? I know there's a stereotype, right? That a lot of solopreneurs will hire a VA from the Philippines for $5 an hour or $2 an hour, right? And so, and there is something to the reality that like the cost of living is different, right? The way that money is exchanged and the value that money has is different across continents and across countries. However, I'm in the United States, right? So like I should be paying someone according to the living standards that I have for myself. Like, why is it okay for me to say, oh, it's okay for that person, but I wouldn't take that job, right? Like that's again going back to that kind of toxic, siloed, individualistic, capitalistic way of seeing things.
Oh, I love that. I was just on Upwork yesterday, so saw a lot of those postings for we want to pay you $2 an hour. And
Yeah,
yes, there is a different cost of living, but are you looking for the best fit person for your company, or are you just looking for the cheapest labor
right.
that you can get? And there's a very big distinction, and one is toxic. It's the toxic capitalism. It's trying to make the most out of something, and you're using somebody else to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been one of those people that when it's time to bring on a VA, I don't care what they say they're gonna like what their rates are because it's going to be usually somewhere between $20 and $35 probably.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be like, no, I'm paying you more than that.
Yeah.
Sorry. I hope you don't mind. I know that's your standards over here, but I
Yeah.
want you to be able to live well
Yeah.
and I want to contribute to that. I know you have other clients and you'll charge them however you've decided, but my rate is going to, what I want to pay you is going to be much different. I've
Hmm.
talked often on this podcast that I see my business as a form of activism and rebelling against toxic capitalism by doing things like that, by
Yeah.
paying people a good wage. And just because I'm CEO doesn't mean I need to be making 10 times what the rest of my team is making.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And I think we, when we don't pay people well, then it becomes exploitative, right? It becomes extractive. And by paying people well, they are then able to do good work. Like, and I'm sure you've been in this position, right? As a business owner, like when you first start out, like you're not sure how to price your stuff. And so you kind of want to price it low just to get the ball rolling, right? Like just to kind of create some momentum and get some people in the door so that way you can build some experience and get testimonials and do those things, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you go too low, then you're not making enough, which means you're not going to be able to do good work because you're going to be stressed out or you're going to need to take on more clients than you actually have the capacity for or take on another job, right? Like, and entrepreneurs, I'm sure, especially service provider entrepreneurs, like we've all been there where we're just like, well, I'm not charging too much for client work right now. So now I have like all these other side hustles as well. And so like you're distracted and you're not able to focus, you're not able to really channel your energy to provide the best experience for your clients. And so, and I know that's not always possible, right? Realistically, like sometimes it just is what it is. But I think we have to remain in a posture of curiosity, right? We have to remain in a posture of self reflection. So that way, when it does become possible, we feel good about making that change, right? We feel prepared to make that change. And it's not like all of a sudden now you have to contend with the idea of raising your prices or, you know what I mean? And so if you're just in that place of just curiosity and constantly learning and exploring and being open to feedback, it makes it easier to shift from one mode to another.
What are some of the other tiny ways that you have rebelled against toxic capitalism in your business?
Yeah, I think a lot of the language that I use is very intentional, right? Whoever comes across me online, I want them to know exactly what my values are. And I think sometimes when you're first starting out as a business owner, that it can feel a little scary to just like really put yourself out there because you're just like, I don't want to turn people off because what if I don't get clients or like what if it takes longer? And so, and I dealt with that at the very beginning, but I think eventually I just got to the point where I had worked with enough people who weren't values aligned where I was like, I don't want to work with these people anyway. So, so I'm just gonna just be very, very upfront with my language, with my marketing, with the way that I present myself online, my digital footprint, so that people know who I am, what I stand for, and if it's not aligned for them, then they can self-select out. Then it's easy for everybody, right? Because the guesswork is taken out of the picture. Another way is by being open to different ways of doing business. I think white supremacy and capitalism says this is the way you do business. And if you don't do the business this way, you won't succeed, right? There's one right way. And that's not true, right? That's just not true. And so that, but I think coming to terms with that means redefining what success looks like for you, right? Like capitalism defines success as increasing your profit margin, increasing your bottom line as much as possible, right? The way that I define success is by values alignment, impact, and how much time and flexibility I have in my schedule to breathe and to rest and to read and to garden and to do things like that. And so there's tension there, obviously, because, and there's always going to be tension because there's always going to be a part of me that wants to make more money. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Money is not a bad thing, right? It's how we use money, it's how we value money, it's how we talk about money, and it's how we exploit money, right? Or exploit the labor of other people. So, but even with that tension there, what that means is like, I think sometimes when people feel that tension, they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it, or maybe I should do it. And they kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. But all that tension means is that that line, that boundary is dynamic and fluid. And so it's going to shift circumstantially. So, what works for me this week on being values aligned and impact and having enough time in my schedule to recover and to rest is not going to look the same next week or next month or next year. And being okay with that flux is where we have to find ourselves.
I think one of the things that I've really loved about getting to know other business owners, specifically in like the online space, and also has helped my growth personally the most, is getting out of corporate where everybody has to work the same way no matter what, and realizing that how much that doesn't fit a vast majority of the human population.
Yeah.
So very few, like I knew I struggled, and my personality is the type of like likes the structure, likes the times,
Hmm.
likes to time block my calendar, all of those kind of. I don't like the constant interruptions that happen in an office, but no, it's like wow, I didn't. If you're chronically ill, if you're a caregiver, it's just if you're neurodivergent, there's so
Yeah.
many ways that the corporate world does not work and schools do not work for a vast majority of the people.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. My wife, she just took her PMP certification. And it's like, I don't know if you remember taking SATs, like, but it's like that. Like you're sitting for like 2 to 4 hours at a time with just like two really quick 10-minute breaks. And you can't take the first break until you get to a certain number of questions under your belt. And she has ADHD. And so sitting in a chair for hours at a time, looking at one screen, and I mean, she took it online. Like you have the choice to like take it online or take it in person. And she took it online because she's my primary caregiver, and so she doesn't like to leave the house for long periods of time in case I'm not feeling well. We also have two senior dogs who are they're just sick all the time. God, we love them, but oh my God, it's it's a lot taking care of senior pets. But yeah, and so she decided to take it online, but then they as soon as you sign on, they're like, show me your desk. You can't have anything on your desk. You can't have anything under your desk. And I get it that those structures are there to prevent cheating and things like that. But at the same time, like you were saying, like she has ADHD, like people with ADHD or neurodivergence, like they need multiple sensory stimulations and you can't have any of that. And so you're basically set up to fail. And so much of the world is just so static. It's so static. And I think the more that we can build businesses and business communities that are more dynamic and more fluid and are just really in tune with how to meet the needs of the people that we're serving in a way that is accessible for them, right? That's the easiest way for us as business owners to resist capitalism. You don't even have to do anything else beyond that. If you just do that, in that work, you are resisting capitalism, right? And I think most people who are service providers, that's their goal, right? To support and serve the people that are their clients. And if you do that well, I think that's a model for how to do business differently in a world that tells you there's only one way to succeed.
I I've mentioned on the podcast before that I saw a job posting by Channing Nichols, and who like I basically worship. And and the very first thing I saw was like every single one of our employees makes minimum $80,000. We have unlimited time off, all these different things, and I know that they are doing very well as a business.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah,
still able to do all of these things. So it is possible. And when I saw that, that was what clicked for me of like, okay, it is possible to reach whatever revenue number you want and still treat people like people who are your employees,
hmm,
to do good work in the world. It doesn't have to be the way that we keep being taught.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember seeing that about her company as well. And I was just like, whoa, this is goals. Like, this is goals to be able to say, to run a business and say, nobody makes under not just a living wage, but a thriving wage. Nobody has to beg for time off for whatever reason. Like, I know they do like menstrual time off too for people who have periods. And I'm just like, that's amazing. If I didn't have to go into, like, I remember just being like in my early 20s, like just being a baby employee, right? And like being on my period and having the worst cramps. And there was nothing I could do about, like, I could just not go in and not get paid, or take vacation time or sick time, which is doled out, like it's rationed out so cruelly sometimes. And so the way that she's been able to run her company is definitely goals for all of us, I think.
What would you say are the three biggest lessons you've learned since starting your business?
Yeah. The biggest one by a landslide. I think number one is that being a good coach and facilitator is not the same as being a good business owner. Like, those are two different skill sets. And when I first started my coaching business, I was so excited. And I still am. Like, it still brings me joy. It's not like it doesn't bring me joy anymore. But it was a really hard lesson to learn that, oh, I need to, I don't know how to run a business, actually. Like, I know how to be a coach, but I don't know how to run a business. I don't know what I'm doing. And that realization was hard to contend with for multiple reasons. I think one is, I think as adults, we assume that anything that we try, we're going to be good at immediately. And when we're not, we're just like, oh, well, then it's not for me. Right. Like, kids will keep trying, adults will just give up so easily. And so there was that I had to like work through. But then the other thing also is just like, I'm a Capricorn sun, Virgo rising. What do you mean I'm not a good business owner? Like,
Capricorn, Sun, Virgo, Moon. So
so you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm
100%.
talking about. It's like, I'm perfect at
Uh-huh.
everything I do. Like, what the hell are you talking about? So it was just a big ego death that I had to go through to get that. But it forced me to learn how to like get around other people who were doing the same work but with more experience, and like network and build like business collaborative relationships, which I'm really thankful for, because some of my healthiest relationships are with other business owners that I've been in network with for years now. I think the like number two and number three are just really just personal things, like being able to like honor my own needs as a business owner, because I will just, again, just go, 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 go. And then be like, oh, I just want to lay in bed for 3 days. I wonder why. And it's like, oh, because I burned myself out. That's why. And so it's when you're used to working for someone else and like they set the pace and they set the schedule and they set the priorities, it can be difficult to then be your own boss in that way, right? To like not just set the pace and the priorities and the schedule, but also to be like, I know you don't feel like writing that email to your email list right now, but you need to, because that's your job. Like, that's your job. It's your job to stay in touch with people. It's your job to create content, like not as like an influencer, but just as, or a content creator, but as a business owner. So it's easy for the people who are looking for someone like me to find me. And then number three is just networking. That was, which is kind of related to number one and number two as well. I'm an incredibly introverted person. I've learned to, like, as I've gotten older, I've learned to kind of balance that out. But I remember I got fired from a job once, and I had two roommates at the time, but they both had like really big families. So they would just stay at like a brother or sister's house like all the time. And so it was basically like I lived alone. It was honestly the best setup because it was like I'm in this 3-bedroom apartment by myself most of the time. But then I got fired from my job. And then I was in the apartment and I didn't have a car at the time. So I was in the apartment alone for days at a time. And I would go days without talking, which honestly is kind of a dream, but but not completely healthy, right? So all that to say, like, learning to not be so introverted as a business owner is different from learning to not be so introverted as an individual. And so that has I kind of feel like I'm still learning that too, just because we moved a few years ago to a new city where we didn't know anyone. And I still don't really feel settled because I don't want to go out there and meet people. And so I've been slowly like pushing myself to do it. And I'm at the point now where I've met a few people and we're trying to like keep in touch, and I meet up for coffee regularly. And so that's definitely helping. But at first I was like, no, I'll just work from home and just go on my virtual meetings and I'll be fine. But I'm not. And so that's number 3 is like learning to just like leave my house as a business owner.
A couple of years into my business, my friends were like, wow, you've gotten really social. And I was like, I'm in by myself for many, many hours a day. You all are in an office talking to people all day. So when you're done, you don't want to talk
You're
to
done,
people.
yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, I need to talk to people now.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, because I'm an introvert too, so it's like 2 people at a time. That's it. But
yeah.
I became a lot more social when I started working from home because I needed the conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. It's my name really on any social media, LinkedIn, TikTok, or Instagram. It's just my name, Taina M for Maree Brown. And then you can also check out my website. I mentioned that I started out coaching and I've since moved into coaching, yes, but also facilitation of like professional development work for leaders and their teams. And so that is part of a business that I actually started with my wife. She's a data analyst and an evaluation person. And so she does that side of the work and I do the personal and professional development. And that website is ifthenand.org. And so, yeah, that's where I can be found.
All right. And everybody, you can also find her on Messy Liberation with Becky, who's also a guest.
The podcast. I know Becky is so tired of me because I always forget to mention the podcast. Yes, the Messy Liberation podcast with Becky Mollenkamp.
Yeah, I have a friend who is a podcast producer, and she's like, I don't understand all you folks who are on podcasts and you don't mention your podcast. It's an easy way to get people over. And I'm like, I never do either. I'm like, come to my email list instead of like, listen to my podcast.
Yeah. We have new episodes out every Monday, and the podcast is raw, and we cover everything from like politics to social media to pop culture. It's very true to its name. It's just about navigating the messiness of life.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for hanging out with me on Here's What I Learned. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, a laugh, or something to think about, make sure you're subscribed to my email list. That's where I share even more tips, stories, and behind-the-scenes insights to help you simplify and thrive. And remember, you get to do business and life your way. Until next time, keep experimenting, keep simplifying, and keep learning.